We have just a few minutes for discussion on the role of consciousness for individual and collective health, including its effect on gene regulation. Perhaps we could ask if anyone from the audience has any questions related to the presentations by any of our speakers this morning.
I enjoyed the talk on the genes and their regulation due to the individuals, those who were performing TM. In those studies, or a similar pattern has been looked at in various conditions also. What I wanted to ask you in particular, is there any kind of basal level through which one can have a data compared in various other conditions? Or a pathway link or a network link which can be associated a particular pattern?
Yes, good question. What this study does, the heat map that I showed you and the other things are sort of the result of extensive statistical analysis of the data that's generated. And the basic thing that's done is to take your control group and your, in this case, meditation group, and to look at the levels of expression of those genes for each of those groups, basically. And so the difference is there are, if you look in detail, you see there are actually 4 grades of blue and 4 grades of red there. The lightest is the lowest, as closest to the median for each of those. And so each of those is a comparison between the 2 groups, actually. Does that answer your question?
I was interested, particular individual at a different level. So dynamics of the gene expression, I think the key, what we are talking about, I think that at a different, so the similar individual having a different genetic pattern or different genomics or maybe metabolic products as compared to when the similar individual has done the TM.
Yes.
I think that would be.
It would be very interesting.
Yeah.
These are just the beginning experiments. We're sort of at the edge of this frontier. There's a huge amount to explore. In this study, we were comparing long-term meditators with non-meditators. So we were looking for stable changes in gene expression. So these aren't things that happen during meditation, but are things that are stably different between meditators and non-meditators in terms of their gene expression. And of course, we're only looking at one cell type. We're looking at white blood cells. You can think of those white blood cells as being sensors. They're in your blood. And really the question you're asking is, if you compare meditators and non-meditators, what are the substances in the blood? There must be substances in the blood that these cells experience that influence their level of gene expression. So for instance, maybe for stress, it's something like adrenaline in the blood that influences the expression of these genes. Or for tumor suppression, there's something that strengthens the ability of those tumor suppressor genes. So it's quite an interest, and we want to now look at what happens in real time as someone meditates. Are there genes that are turned on or off? And are there differences between different states of consciousness? These are all questions that are completely open. Very exciting and interesting questions. Thanks.
We all been discussing about consciousness since morning. My question to the panel is one very difficult question for me to understand, whether the consciousness lies within us or we lie within consciousness. Yeah, please answer.
Well, Dr. Waltermurk was talking about consciousness, and I'll let him answer that from the standpoint of Ayurvedic medicine and modern medicine. From the physics perspective, the universal field of intelligence that gives birth to the universe and all of the organisms within the universe, that ocean is an ocean of consciousness. So the whole universe basically arises from this ocean of consciousness and is really nothing but the ocean of consciousness. Just as the waves on the surface of an ocean are really nothing but the ocean in motion. So from that standpoint, looking at it from the perspective of a physicist who is interested and familiar with consciousness, we all reside in an ocean of consciousness, and it becomes a very interesting question how that universal consciousness gets individualized as it's expressed through our own nervous system, where it assumes our personal characteristics and desires and so forth. So another angle on this, very good question.
Yeah, I think you have answered it in that direction. And this is somehow also a self-referral question. And then there always gets into a paradoxical situation, because the definition is that consciousness is conscious of itself. So, and if there is only consciousness, then how can it be conscious of something else? And if this something else is again itself, so Maharishi calls it the 3-in-1 paradox. And normally a paradox is a great problem, and especially in science. But here, it seems the basic paradox of life, that it is unity and diversity at the same time. So this togetherness, as Maharishi described, of the Sanghita of the observer, the observed, and the process, Rishi Devata Chandas, is a unity, and it is at the same time also diversity. And so this actually Maharishi advised the one role of the Vaidya, or the physician, should be that he increases in the patient the ability to reconcile opposite values. Because if you cannot reconcile opposite values in your life, then this can create problems and tensions in the mind and then further in the physiology. So the ability to reconcile opposite values, to increase that ability, is one function of the physician. And of course, the greatest things which cannot be reconciled, this is unity and diversity, or silence and dynamism. But interestingly, this is the nature of our own self. And there it is not creating a problem, but it is said that nature is, everything is coming out of Ananda. So these opposite values here don't create stress, but are the motivating force of creation and Ananda, bliss, and everything comes out of bliss and sustains in bliss. So it's definitely something which one can think about, and everyone has to resolve it for himself, because consciousness is that which is conscious of itself. So, and only that can know itself. So at some stage, I think there is an end of these questions, and one has just the possibility also to experience it directly. This is my mind.
One more question.
I think that's...
One more question, please.
Yes, brief question.
Yeah, brief question and an observation. Our second speaker this morning spoke about Achar Rasayan, 3,000 plus different prescriptions of charaka to change our behavior and create an effect on our health. Later this morning, we heard about 21,000 genes and how consciousness, or going to that deeper level of the unified field, will affect gene expression. So I wondered if taking that thought of the second speaker to study the effect of those so many behavioral rasayanas prescribed by charaka, whether you might find that actually, if you take it to a deeper level, enlivenment of consciousness could be a formula to enliven all of those behavioral rasayanas, that if an individual who is not developing their consciousness is stressed, they'll get all of those things wrong, even if you advise them to do them rightly. And whether consciousness, just as it's affecting gene expression, could also affect behavioral resigners or the ability to live them. We may even find that somebody would spontaneously act in accord with those prescriptions if they first raise their consciousness through techniques such as transcendental meditation. It's a direction for research.
Yes, there are many elements of your question, very deep question. One thing is in terms of consciousness and behavior and health promoting elements of both. Charak does give the achara sign, the behavioral sign is in one set there's about 25, although there are thousands in other parts. And spiritual practices, samadhi is certainly one of the behavioral signs. And yes, if one meditated to complete enlightenment, then the behaviors would come out of it. I think of it as a circle, consciousness and behavior. Consciousness and health on top, and then behaviors on the bottom. So if you raise consciousness, yes, that goes halfway around the circle, and it changes behavior. But Charak also clearly says the other 25 behaviors also change health. And actually, those behaviors feed back onto consciousness. So if you follow the daily routine, you'll have clearer meditations. If you go to bed at 10 and wake up at 6, that'll affect your consciousness, and then you'll transcend more deeply. That'll affect behavior. So I think of it as an interacting loop between consciousness and behavior. He could have said, just meditate, and we don't need the rest of the book. But he said, look, if you do these three areas, if you take care of the daiva level, the environment, if you take care of the body with food and herbs and panchakarma, and if you take care of your mind, including yoga, then that'll be the most efficient or maximum path of evolution. You could probably use just one of each of those three. And certainly there are people who just use the yukti or physiological approaches, and they have some effects on their mind and body, and certainly people just use the yoga, and certainly people just use the mind. But he seems to be saying that all three are part of the total package for maximum effect, and they each supports the other.
Beautiful, thank you.
Well, thank you. These are really all excellent questions and some very, very stimulating, interesting answers.